Hello and welcome to today's Claimversation. My name is Ashley Sneller and I'm joined today by Jim Girard, our VP of Engineering at Benekiva. Now, at these Claimversations, our goal is to have conversations that talk about bringing together technology, processes, and people in the right mix so that we have the best claim outcomes, both for our claimants, but also for the examiners processing those claims. Jim, this is your first time on our show. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're passionate about insurance technology?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in insurance and technology for about 30 years now. So it seems forever. And the majority of that, over 25 of which, has been in the insurance industry specifically. So I've gathered a lot of it. And at this point, doing it for so long, I have a great appreciation and understanding and passion about how we use technology in this market space.
I'll link this in our comments and our description, but we did a behind the claims interview with Jim a couple months ago, and it's just really neat to see how much it has changed in the time that he's been in the industry too, of where you started versus today. We're talking about AI, which is everywhere, but light years ahead of where things were 20 years ago. It's really
Yeah,
wild.
yeah, without a doubt.
Now, AI is a loaded topic. We have a lot to talk about today. But just to start things off, Jim, what is your experience with AI like? How do you use it?
I use it every day, and just for anyone who questions it, I'm pro AI. Like, I'm all in it. I think it's great. I do understand people who might be skeptical or apprehensive, but I mean, I do it every day. For just taking care of personally scheduling or just finding information, being able to gather information by asking questions as compared to just doing like a Google search. It offers more information and more flexibility and more engagement. Whereas we just didn't have that, and it's every single day. It just keeps getting better and more in depth and more insightful. I really think that opens up an avenue for creativity, which is kind of the way I encourage my family to use it, is just use it as a way to get knowledge and be creative and expand thoughts of things that you never thought you could do with. I have two young kids. Just at the age you're at, the things that you can do, creatively speaking, that you couldn't have done when I was a kid, is just astronomically different. So
It's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
I think about a workday today versus a workday a year ago, and Benekiva is very pro AI, but there are things that I regularly tell my team, I shouldn't be able to do this. Like this used to cost, hiring a firm and thousands of dollars, and I just did it in a couple hours with help from AI. It's just wild.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So then bringing that into the insurance realm, we're going to talk about quite a bit today. We want to talk about how should we even be thinking about using AI in insurance? But also, what are the gotchas? What are the guardrails? What are the questions we should be asking to make sure we do it safely, securely,
Mhm.
in a scalable manner? So, starting kind of at the top of the funnel, broadly speaking, what impact would AI have in insurance? What should insurers be thinking about in terms of use cases for AI, particularly in the claims area?
Yeah, I mean, so it's an understanding of just taking a step back and looking at your own process. Now you still have the question of, should your process still be the same today as it was, X amount of years ago? Not even including AI, just with technology advancements in general. I mean, that's one question that we could easily take a step back and answer. But when you look at how does AI get involved with some of this, it's really a matter of looking at what are your day-to-day tasks, what are the I'll call the mundane, right? So what are the things that you do that have to be done, per regulations or whatever, that are just eating up time, right? That aren't engaging, that aren't helping you really move forward. So that's an evaluation of finding those points, and then coming back and saying, how can AI help, or can AI help? Or there's a lot of information out there, and yeah, you have to be a little bit skeptical of some of it. Some of it's shiny and new and not proven in some areas, but a lot of it is. So just taking a broad sweep of here are my pain points, here are what I always call the mundane points, and then saying, how can I influence those? How can I make those more efficient with technology? And then another layer on top of that, how can AI or can AI help in addition to that?
Yeah, that's huge. And I think one thing that can be hard thinking through all of this is you can't go anywhere without AI being there. It's all over LinkedIn, it's all over conferences. I can't even watch Netflix without it coming up in commercial breaks.
It's true.
How do carriers sift through the noise when there's all of these things bombarding them about AI?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question because it's bombarding to everyone. Like I said, Netflix, and it's just everywhere. I mean, Claude put out like I don't know half a dozen Super Bowl commercials this year,
Yeah,
so it's definitely getting the vision of everyone. So it's not just insurance. I mean, it's just a fact of life, and honestly, and again, I think it's awesome. I think utilizing AI in aspects of your life. Um, where you were held back or just you couldn't get to that point without it, I think is great. Um, there's um, there's a lot to go into and think about from an insurance perspective. I mean, you think about again going back to what's the mundane. I keep hearing things like faster document processing and summarization, which is great. It 100% it can do that really really well. Um, but it gets better every single day. So the question isn't, can AI help you, or it may not even be an AI thing. It might just be a technology thing because there's
yeah,
there's different avenues you can take, and there's companies out there that will do all of this, but AI's gotten really good at it,
yeah,
right? So the question isn't how can I use document summarization. The question really is what happens to the data after I do document summarization. So those are really the questions you get into. Um, the other one I hear a lot is speed to market. AI can make everything faster. It's a big one, right? So it's so big and so shiny that it's so confusing. Right?
yeah,
If that makes sense.
yep,
Companies offer things like fully autonomous workflows. Right? I can go from point A to point B in any industry, and I can do this, and that's great. And quite honestly, again, I'm all for that. I think that is absolutely a path forward. The problem I have with it is AI is not there, right? And I think we need to have that realization that AI is awesome and AI is great. And again, I'm a proponent of it, but let's not make it into be something bigger than what it is, right? It is
yep,
great, but it's not a cure for cancer, in a way
yep,
to say that. So utilizing it and understanding more of how can I use AI in my life? How can it be AI assistant rather than AI driven?
hmm,
Right. So if we AI drive something, we become completely dependent on AI. And just knowing the insurance industry, who's risk adverse in the first place,
yeah,
um, that becomes really risky, right? To sit
yeah,
there and fully rely on AI, especially since, again, we're still in its infancy,
yeah,
and knowing things like government regulations and things like that haven't, I mean, let's be honest, when things get too big, the government usually steps in here. So they haven't done that yet. But, looking down the road is there's probably going to be something.
yeah,
And are companies who are fully involved with AI going to be prepared for that?
yeah,
So that's some of the noise and things like that that I hear. And a lot of it comes down to, you know, um, you know, yeah, a lot of it comes down to cost anymore. Like as we're evaluating this stuff, is we have the regulations and then we have the cost of what it takes to run some of this stuff, especially with these AI workflow kind of thing, these concepts. Which again, I think is a great concept, but my fear is as you incorporate more AI agents, which
hmm,
is essentially something that's going to use to process a point within your application, as you use more of them, they become more expensive.
yeah,
Every step you take becomes a little bit more expensive. And you see in the news, data centers want to be built, and people complaining about the use of water and all that stuff to keep
yep,
all of those processors cool. Um, And that's a real problem. So some of these AI companies have taken a stance of, what internet, in fact, the internet still does. And that is, I can go and pay for like a 2 gig internet connection, but during peak time, I might only get like 500. So I'm getting,
Yeah.
25% of what I'm paying for. And that's the way that these AI models, these AI companies are changing what they do. So if I'm a claims company and I have a fully automated AI workflow, for example,
Yeah.
or even I'm heavy in AI, there's always the pushback that at a point in time it's going to slow down,
Yeah.
right? And then if you plan for that, cool. If you don't, there's a problem, right?
Yeah.
It's always planning for the worst, and that's not even the worst. That's just planning on what's going to happen on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So the peak time is probably going to be your peak claim processing time,
Yeah.
which means you're going to move slower than maybe what you anticipated. So there's a lot of things out there that can be asked about companies and things like that. So
I like that
I
a
think
lot.
that answered your question.
Yeah, it actually leads really well into one that I wanted to ask of. So let's say I'm a carrier or I'm a claims leader and I'm evaluating different AI tools or platforms. And I feel like there's a list of questions in what you just said, and probably more than that, of what should I be asking? What should I be mindful of? I think one of them you just said that I want to double click on. You talked about the difference between AI driven and AI
Mhm.
assisted, and particularly how that relates to things like regulations or even, no one wants to think about this, but you're in litigation and you can't just say, well, AI paid the claim, like I'm not in trouble. That's not going to work in a court. But let's talk about, what does AI driven versus AI assisted mean, and how do carriers ask about that when they're evaluating tools?
Yeah, so it's more of a simple approach. Is am I replacing my process? The nuclear approach is, am I replacing my process that I have today with a fully AI driven process
Mm-hmm.
versus am I guess to my earlier point, am I finding the mundane, I always like to use that word, I don't know why, but the points in my process where it slows down,
Mm-hmm.
where I can find the most efficiency. Can I use AI in that spot? Right? Document processing is definitely one of them. Correspondence and things like that,
Yeah.
is another one. Like, how long does it take to generate a letter? Am I generating the right information? Do I have to get this bit of research from over here? Um, Things like that. So it's, if you look for those spots in your process and decide, can I use technology?
Mm-hmm.
Can I use AI? Right. So those are big questions. And then when you start getting down into, what is it that, you know, speaking on both sides, I've been a consumer and a provider, for technology in both aspects. So I've been on both sides of this. But if I'm if I'm evaluating, and I know plenty of insurance companies do this, I'm evaluating: should I build this in house? Should I outsource this? If I outsource this, what am I looking for?
Mm-hmm.
And AI is the shiny object out there, and you demo AI, and it looks phenomenal,
Sure.
right? It just does, and it can do that, and it will be phenomenal. But what does the back of that look like,
Yeah.
right? I think that's the question that a lot of companies need to understand. Is I can put out, a prototype, right, which is a buzzword. I hate to hear that, but I could put up a prototype of a workflow or a prototype of an application, or I can even do that in house and put together that application utilizing AI, right? Because a lot of people are doing that. People are
Yeah.
using third-party tools and building these, advanced websites, and they look great. And the advertising looks like you can do all of these things.
Yeah.
But what happens behind the scenes,
That's
right?
huge.
Who's building it? Like, is it you that understands the claims process, loose on technology? Do you understand them both really well? Are you going to a company who understands technology and workflows and AI usage, but maybe doesn't understand you as a company, maybe
Yeah.
your workflows, your process, your industry, in this case, claims? I think that's what
Yeah.
carriers really need to take a look at, is saying, if I'm going to work with someone, I want them to understand me.
Yeah.
The same thing as the person on the other end of the phone who's calling in about a claim is, I want I want the claims examiner to understand me,
Yeah.
right? So giving the claims examiner the tools to help them understand the person on the other end of the phone makes a world of difference. Doesn't make a difference to the bottom line, but it makes a difference to the person on the other end of that phone. And
Yeah.
that's where that AI assistance makes a difference.
Yeah.
AI driven takes that passion, that care, that empathy away from the examiner, so that then in turn doesn't go out to the person who's actually making the call on, I know I've said this before, on, what could be, the worst day of their life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So
it really goes back to the buzzword of human in the loop. I mean, that's why we do what we do. We're not trying to replace people. We're trying
right.
to help them do their jobs faster and help them not have to worry about all the monotonous things, but still be able to make the decisions. And there's a piece there too of who's making each call. Like, does the AI do it all end to end, or are there little checkpoints where the person is checking it along the way to make sure it's right and compliant and care filled, for the person
Yeah.
on the other end of the line?
Yeah. 100% is, the claims industry is a very broad term, but, for the most part, when you think about the different types of claims out there, we're in the care industry.
Yep.
Right? That's our job. We care and we process to be able to get people the compensation that they paid for. Now, granted, I know if you're calling in about an annuity or something like that, maybe there's not the same care involved, but
Sure.
death claims, critical illness. I mean,
Yep.
we're in the care industry.
Yep.
So
There's another piece that you hit on that I want to dig into of almost credits used of something that people may not think about is how usage is impacted by how the system's built or by how, like, for example,
so
if a claim is automatically processed by AI, that's probably going to take a lot more tokens than if it's just here's recommended next step, check, I'm going to go do that. Or I guess how should what kinds of questions do carriers ask, or what should they be asking to make sure that their infrastructure costs, their credit costs, whatever it may be, don't get out of control?
yeah, so I won't go too in depth on that, but essentially credits and tokens all have to do with how AI models charge back for the usage, just for a broad sense of how that works. And essentially, the AI is all driven based on a prompt, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I am going to ask AI this question. I'm going to give it this amount of information, and AI builds what's called context. And as it builds that context, that's how it gets translated into tokens, and that's how the money gets charged and things like that. So the questions you need to look at and need to think about is, where am I sending the most data to get back information? Am I sending in 30 documents and all of the background information on a person to get a response on some
One question, yeah.
meaningless question, right? And if the answer is yeah, I am, you're spending a heck of a lot of money for something you don't need to be doing, right? So it's what am I doing? What am I doing? Those, again, back to those key points, those mundane points, as I keep calling them, is what if, think about your process, think about the information, think about what I want as the end result, and then have someone guide you, or think about it yourself first, is the information I would need in order to get X result. Mm-hmm. So if it's, I want to make a background check on someone, right? How much information do I need to send? Yep. Right? Am I sending in 30 documents? Am I sending in HIPAA forms? Am I sending in everything I've gathered? Right? That's over the top, right? We don't need to send all that. And some companies they're going to build their prompts to say, send in all the information gathered. And it's costing you 10, 20, 30 times more than it should be, right? As an insurance company utilizing AI. So it also comes down to if you build in-house, right? The same kind of thing is if the person, and this is where these third parties kind of get a little bit under my skin, is you're giving people the ability to, let's say, create a website. Mm-hmm. and it's great. They would have never been able to do it, outside of this. They would have never been able to write, JavaScript or
Yep.
.NET or what have you. But now they can build a site that looks good, by asking, but you're going through all these, to your points, credits over and over and over and over, and it's churning a lot. Not because, and it's exciting because you see this, but on the back end, it's a lot of charge because you don't know how to actually interact with AI.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we get into, and I'm just using that as a very visual example, but that's what a lot of the back end of a lot of these applications are built on. I'm going to send in X prompt. I'm going to pass in this amount of information, but they don't know anything about optimization and proper prompting. And I'm not saying all of them, so I don't think I'm throwing everyone into the same. I just know there are companies that haven't learned to do that. Again, AI is still in its infancy, like beyond pre-infancy at this point, just seeing how far we can go. So just knowing how to utilize AI now is going to help for the future, right? Especially when it comes down to, I need to reduce costs. Well, how, right? And how impactful is that if we don't do it right the first time? If I have to go back and revamp a system to make it cheaper, maybe a poor choice of words, but to reduce cost based on the way I'm using it, how impactful is that now going to be? Do I need to take the system down for a week? Right? Worst case scenario. It's future things that people just need to think about. And again, it's all confusing. There's a lot of information out there, but there are definitely some points that can be looked at and can be researched. It's not too difficult to try and figure out where that is and where the planning is of wherever you're evaluating or however you're processing.
Yeah, it's a good way to think about it. As someone who's not a technologist, if someone said, hey, spend less on I probably wouldn't know what to do with that. I would just think I have to use it less. Like I just can only do 5 prompts instead of 10. It would never occur to me of like, oh, maybe I should change how I'm prompting.
Yep.
That's really clever.
Yep.
Another obviously top of mind concern is security. So if we're talking about AI, where does my data go? How do I know if my claimant's data is safe? What should carriers be asking to make sure that they're maintaining security?
Yeah, security is going to be, again, to the shiny object, to the people that are in the security industry or that do security for these insurance carriers. I've talked with a lot of them, so I'm with them when I get the misuse or misunderstanding of what AI can do with data. Because if you don't know how your data is being used, it's being used in the worst way you can think. Right? Not that it's going out, into the world, in the world of hackers or anything like that. So maybe not the worst case, but if you look at what AI agents do and how they function, is they're trained based on context and usage and questions and responses and all of that information. And your data can be used to train an AI agent. Right? By default, it is trained to use an AI agent. So to combat that, there's a couple different ways that people have done it. So some of the larger ones like Claude and OpenAI, and then going to the cloud providers like AWS, Google, or Azure, they all have BAA agreements that say that you can use our AI agents, whomever it is. Sometimes you have a choice. Whomever it is, we promise that we will not use that data to leave our system. We will not use that data to train our AI agent, right? So that's a level of security. But what happens, and again, to the whole item that still sits in the back of my mind that I mentioned before, is what happens when the government decides they want to step in and get a little bit better hold on this. I was with an insurance company when HIPAA came out. So I'm dating myself, right? So I was in charge of how do we mark our data? How do we make sure we're HIPAA compliant with all that information? So the same type of thing is going to happen. And I think we need to make sure we don't fool ourselves. So what are we doing from an AI perspective to make sure that we're going to be HIPAA? We're not sending PHI or PII data where it shouldn't be. Because if you look at it today, right now, especially to my document summarization example, is people are sending in claim forms and there's everything on there. I mean, you can be down to medical history, personal, social security numbers, addresses, everything. And AI is just going to turn right through that. And it could be training itself on your data today with people that use it. And that's the scary part about AI. Now, there are ways to mitigate that. And as being in the insurance industry, again, being something that's risk adverse, understanding how to deal with that, I think is a huge concern and a huge question that carriers need to ask either internally or to a vendor that they're looking at. How do you prepare for that information? How do you prepare for when that day hits? Or in reality, what are you doing right now? Right? Because if I have insurance, I try to be pretty secure with everything I do, but I don't know what my insurance company is doing with that information. I don't know where my medical records are going. If they're using AI to traverse through that, I can't control that. So you being an insurance company in this space, it's your responsibility to know what's going on with that data. So asking that question is hugely important.
Yeah. I feel like it's an interesting kind of competing mindset of, yes, we want to use it. It can do great things. It can help us go faster, help us serve better. But also there are these scary things. As a carrier, let's say I'm starting out, how do I navigate that balance? Because it is a tricky balance, right? If I want to use this thing, but I also want to be cautious and mindful about something that is new. It seems like a lot of research is required, but how do I know where to start?
Yeah, so it's one, you can do your own research to an extent. But I mean, honestly, what it comes down to is finding people that are knowledgeable in the industry. There are people out there. There's plenty of them out there, and ask AI-based questions like, what concerns you? I know at Benekiva we open ourselves up specifically for that, even if you're not customers. Just for someone like myself and some others, I mean, 30 years in insurance and technology, it's not the easiest thing to come by, right? The insurance industry is not a glamorous technology spot for someone to land in. But and there's plenty of other people I know that would do the exact same thing, but open up for questions. This isn't about trying to make a quick buck. This isn't about trying to do that. It's about doing the right thing. Again, like I said before, we're in the care industry. We happen to make money by selling insurance. For those that are insurance carriers. So being mindful of the way we treat people, regardless of where they come from, I think is just the stance that we need to take as just people, right? Forget technology. We use technology to enhance our interactions with other people. So I think just ask questions, find someone you trust, and then figure out how you want to decipher it. So AI is going to be a thing to learn, right? There's no getting around it. It's definitely here to stay. It's definitely something that people are going to have to grasp and want to learn with. And I know, again, like I mentioned, Benekiva is someone who's happy to help people navigate that trip, right? Whether or not it's not a matter of who's a customer, who's not a customer. We're here to make the industry better.
Yep.
So
it's one thing I love about the insurance industry in particular is it's such a close-knit community of we're just trying to get to the future where it's a best experience for everyone.
Exactly.
I love that. So as we're coming in for a landing today, I feel like we've talked about quite a bit today. If there was one thing you wanted a carrier listening to take away, what would you want them to hear?
Be cautiously optimistic, right? look for ways to improve, but make sure that you know who you're talking to. Make sure you know where you're getting your information. I know I mentioned that it's still one of my pain points is because I hear it from so many is don't run away from the word prototype. Like, don't don't go towards prototype. That's a hurtful one. That one frightens me, especially in this industry, which with so many
Hmm.
regulations and insurance. Run away from that. But again, big thing is to take away. The main focus is find out what you want to do as a process, find out where those mundane, those ineffective points are within your process, and figure out if I can use technology.
Yeah.
And if I can use technology, can I make technology stronger by using AI alongside of it?
Yeah. I
So
love that.
don't fall into the trap of, of AI can do everything because AI is that shiny object that can lead you down a path that, and again, I've seen this on both sides is it looks great up front,
Hmm.
but when it comes to now implementing it, there are holes all over the place. Um,
100%.
I, I've been a part of that more times than I even care to admit. So I speak that from both ends of it and still have that pain from there. So yeah, those would be my key points. I'd say um, based on this conversation.
I love that. That sounds great. Well, Jim, thank you for joining today. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. And like Jim said, if you guys do just want to have a conversation or hash it out, we would love to talk through it, answer any questions. We've thrown around the idea of even doing something like a live Ask Me Anything or something of just this is a topic everyone has top of mind, but we don't just want to talk about it at a high level. We want to talk about it in a practical way of how do we make this happen? How do we do this wisely and safely, but efficiently and effectively because it is the future and it is coming.
Yeah,
So, Jim, thank you so
absolutely.
much for your time. Everyone, I hope
Thank
you have
you.
a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next Claimversation.